She's not ours. We want nothing to do with her. My father said it while looking straight at the judge. For a second, I thought I'd misunderstood him. I was standing beside my attorney with a financial fraud charge hanging over my head, while a $68,000 loan application carrying my name and what looked like my signature asterisk sat in evidence. My entire defense depended on proving how someone else had gotten my private financial information. And my father had just denied I was even his daughter. The judge turned toward my mother. "Mrs. Morgan." Mom looked at me. I waited for her to correct him. Instead, she nodded. The courtroom went dead silent. My father leaned back, as if he'd finally washed his hands of me. The prosecutor immediately stood. "Your Honor, the defendant has repeatedly claimed Mr. Morgan had access to her personal records, if there was no meaningful relationship." I stepped backward. Not because I was giving up. Because my attorney had just reached for the sealed folder beside him. And my parents had no idea what was inside. I'm Kelly Morgan. I was 27 when I found myself facing accusations that could destroy my career, my finances, and possibly my freedom. From the beginning, I had said the same thing. I never applied for that loan. The application contained my personal information. The signature resembled mine, but the money was connected to a business I didn't own. My father's business. That was why Richard and Diane Morgan had been called. They could establish something crucial, that my father had access to documents containing the exact information later used on that application. Instead, they had chosen the witness stand to abandon me publicly. The prosecutor looked at me. "Ms. Morgan, why would you accuse a man who says he has no relationship with you?" I didn't answer. I looked at my attorney. He leaned close enough that only I could hear him. "Kelly, if we do this, we can't take it back. Are you sure?" Months earlier, we had agreed that the material inside that folder would be used only if my father lied under oath. He just had. "Yes," I whispered. "Do it." My attorney stood. "Your Honor, in light of Mr. Morgan's testimony, the defense requests permission to introduce newly authenticated exhibits and recall him afterward." My father's expression changed. Mom grabbed his arm. The judge looked from them to the sealed folder. "Counsel," he said, "what exactly are you proposing to establish?" My attorney rested one hand on the folder. "The truth about who Kelly Morgan is to that witness." And as my father stared at me, one question suddenly hung over the courtroom. If he was telling the truth, why had I come prepared for the exact moment he denied being my father? 4 months before my father told a judge I wasn't his daughter, I walked into my parents' house holding an envelope that had arrived that morning. Dad was sitting at the kitchen table. I dropped the collection notice in front of him. "Do you know what this is?" He glanced at it, and his expression tightened. "A loan notice. A loan in my name asterisk for $68,000. Mom stopped wiping the counter. Dad pushed the paper toward me. "Then you must have signed something and forgotten about it." I would remember borrowing $68,000. I opened the paperwork. My Social Security information was there. Previous financial details were there. Even information copied from old tax records I had once stored in a filing cabinet in this house. Very few people had ever had access to those documents. My parents had. Then I pointed to the transaction information I had already obtained. "Explain this." Dad stared at it. "Why did the money go into an account connected to your business?" His face changed instantly. "Be very careful what you're accusing me of." "I'm asking a question. You're accusing your father of stealing your identity." Mom finally spoke. "Kelly, lower your voice." I looked at her. "Why? Because the neighbors might hear." Dad stood. For years, that alone had been enough to make me retreat. He had trained me to apologize whenever disagreement threatened the family peace. But this time, I stayed where I was. Dad pointed toward me. You take this outside this family, and you could destroy everything we built. That wasn't a denial. I picked up the notice. As I reached the front door, Mom followed me into the hallway. She glanced toward the kitchen before whispering, "Please don't contact the police yet." I froze. Why? Give your father time. For what? Her voice dropped even lower. To fix things. I stared at her. That sentence followed me all the way home. I stopped asking my parents for explanations. Instead, I photographed every collection notice, saved every message they sent, hired an attorney, and requested certified copies of the original loan documents. When they arrived, I spread them across my dining table. The signature looked like mine from a distance. But something about the handwriting bothered me. The capital letters. The sharp angle in the asterisk hem asterisk. The unusual way the writer formed an asterisk asterisk R asterisk asterisk. I had seen those movements before. I went to the closet and pulled down an old storage box filled with family paperwork. Near the bottom was a handwritten document my father had completed years earlier. His signature was at the bottom. I placed it beside the loan application. Then I stopped breathing for a second. The same strange letter formations were sitting inches apart. For the first time, I wasn't looking at a suspicious loan. I was looking at evidence. Back in the courtroom, my attorney opened the sealed folder. My father watched every movement. "Your Honor," my attorney said, "the defense would like to begin with a certified vital record." He handed the document to the clerk. Then he turned toward my father. "Mr. Morgan, you testified that Kelly Morgan is not yours, correct?" Dad shifted in his chair. "That's correct." My attorney waited until the judge had the document. "Your Honor, this is Kelly Morgan's certified birth certificate." The courtroom became silent again. My attorney continued. "It identifies her father as asterisk Richard Morgan asterisk and her mother as asterisk asterisk Diane Morgan asterisk asterisk." Mom's head dropped. Dad's jaw tightened. The judge looked directly at him. "Mr. Morgan." Dad cleared his throat. "I didn't mean biologically." That answer changed everything. My attorney stepped closer. "What did you mean?" "We've been estranged. She hasn't been part of our lives for years." There it was. The lie had moved. First, I wasn't their daughter. Now I was their daughter, but supposedly a stranger who had been gone for years. And that mattered because if Dad could convince the court we had no contact, he could argue he never had access to the documents used for the loan. My attorney reached back into the folder. "Let's discuss that estrangement." He produced printed messages with verified dates. One after another, they showed regular contact between us during the period surrounding the loan application. Visits, family errands, requests for help. Then he stopped at one message. "Mr. Morgan, did you send Kelly this?" Dad read it. His face hardened. My attorney read it aloud. "Bring those financial papers when you come over. I need help reviewing the family insurance stuff." The prosecutor, who had spent most of the trial watching me, turned toward my father. My attorney continued. "Did Kelly bring those documents?" "I don't remember." "You remember being estranged from her, but you don't remember asking her to bring private financial records to your house." Dad glanced toward Mom. She was staring at the table. My attorney picked up another set of messages. Several had come from her phone asterisk. The judge noticed her reaction. "Mrs. Morgan," he warned, "you will have an opportunity to address your own testimony. Do not communicate with the witness." Mom immediately pulled her hand away from Dad. My attorney still didn't accuse my father of forging anything. He didn't need to. He simply faced him. "So which statement should this court believe? That Kelly wasn't your daughter, or that she was your daughter when you needed her documents?" Dad opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Morgan, you will remain available to this court, and I strongly suggest that both you and Mrs. Morgan remember that testimony given under oath carries consequences. For the first time since my trial began, I saw the prosecutor writing notes while looking at my father instead of me. The room had shifted. My parents had walked in expecting their rejection to isolate me. Instead, their first lie had exposed the second. But my attorney wasn't finished. He closed the folder, looked toward the judge, and said, "Your Honor, now we need to show where the $68,000 actually went." My attorney placed a new stack of records before the judge. "These are the bank records produced during discovery." My father immediately leaned toward his lawyer. My attorney continued, "The prosecution alleges Kelly Morgan obtained $68,000 through this loan, so we traced what happened after the funds were released." He walked the court through the transactions. The money had not remained in an account I controlled. Within days, most of it had been transferred toward expenses associated with my father's struggling contracting company. Supplier payments, outstanding business bills, company expenses. Dad suddenly spoke. She could have transferred it herself. My attorney turned toward him. "Then, let's look at where the application originated." Another record appeared. The electronic loan application had been submitted from an IP address associated with the internet account at my parents' home. My attorney was careful. An IP address alone doesn't identify the person sitting behind a computer, but it establishes something important. This application originated from the household Mr. Morgan just claimed had no meaningful connection to Kelly. Dad's face tightened. Then my attorney removed the handwritten document I had found in my storage box. I recognized it immediately. My father's writing. His signature. His corrections. This original was provided for comparison with portions of the disputed application. Dad stared at it. My attorney pointed out the distinctive letter formations I had noticed months earlier, the same sharp angles and unusual strokes appearing across both documents. "A document examiner compared the originals," he said. "Those findings have been prepared for the court." Mom leaned toward Dad and whispered urgently, "Richard." "Stop," the judge said. She pulled back. Then my attorney looked at me. I handed him the final pages. Mom's preserved messages. He read the most important one. "Please don't contact the police yet. Give your father time to fix things." Dad pushed himself up. "This is ridiculous. She's twisting everything." Bang. The judge slammed his gavel. "Mr. Morgan, sit down." Dad remained standing for half a second. The judge's voice hardened. "You will not interrupt these proceedings again." My father slowly lowered himself into his chair. The judge looked at the bank records, the application, the handwriting comparison, and Mom's messages. Then he looked directly at my parents. The people who had entered that courtroom claiming I wasn't theirs were no longer simply witnesses against me. Now the evidence was pointing back at them. The echo of the gavel disappeared, but nobody moved. My father sat rigidly beside my mother. The judge looked directly at him. "Mr. Morgan, if you interrupt these proceedings again, you will be removed from this courtroom. Do you understand?" Dad gave a stiff nod. My attorney stood. "Your Honor, the defense is prepared to complete the evidentiary chain." One by one, he returned to what the court had already seen. Richard and Diane Morgan were my biological parents. My father had specifically requested that I bring financial documents to his home. The fraudulent application contained information found in those documents. The application had been submitted through the internet connection at my parents' house. The loan money had flowed toward expenses associated with Dad's contracting company. And Mom had asked me not to contact the police while Dad tried to fix things. Then came the document examiner's findings. My attorney placed the comparison before the judge. The examiner identified multiple distinctive letter formations on the disputed paperwork, consistent with Richard Morgan's known handwriting samples. Dad shook his head. My attorney continued. The signature attributed to Kelly, however, contains material differences from her authenticated signatures. The prosecutor requested the comparison. He studied it in silence. I watched his expression change. For months, I had been the person everyone expected to explain herself. Now nobody was looking at me. They were looking at my father. The judge turned toward him. You told this court, under oath, that Ms. Morgan was not yours. Dad swallowed. I told you what I meant. We were estranged. The judge glanced at the messages. The evidence before me indicates regular contact during the relevant period. Dad said nothing. And suddenly, the cruelty of what my parents had done at my trial made sense to everyone in the room. They hadn't denied me simply because they were ashamed. If the court believed Dad had no relationship with me, then my claim that he had access to my financial information would sound impossible. She's not ours had been part of the defense he was trying to build for himself. My attorney looked at me. Kelly, is there anything you want the court to understand? I stood. Mom finally looked at me. Her eyes were wet now. I could have told the judge about every bill I had helped them pay, every time Dad had made me feel selfish for saying no, every apology I had made just to keep peace in that house. But none of that was necessary. When my father said I wasn't his daughter, I said, I didn't argue because I knew arguing wouldn't prove anything. Dad stared at the table. So I let the record speak. Mom covered her mouth. Kelly. She started crying. I was trying to protect this family. I looked at her. You were protecting him from what he did to me. Her hand dropped. She had no answer. Neither did Dad. After reviewing the evidence and hearing arguments from both sides, the case against me could no longer stand. The fraud allegations against me were dismissed. But the courtroom proceedings weren't simply forgotten. The judge directed that the testimony and exhibits involving my parents be referred to the appropriate authorities for further investigation. Dad now faced scrutiny over fraud, identity theft, forgery, and his statements under oath. Mom's testimony and preserved messages raised separate questions about how much she knew and whether she had helped conceal what happened. Accounts and remaining business assets connected to the disputed funds were frozen while investigators traced the money. When I walked out of the courtroom, I heard footsteps behind me. Kelly. Dad. I stopped, but didn't turn around immediately. We can fix this privately, he said. You don't need to let strangers tear this family apart. Months earlier, those words might have worked. I turned. You told a courtroom I wasn't your daughter. His face tightened. That isn't what I meant. I know exactly what you meant. Mom stepped toward me. Please, just talk to us. I shook my head. Anything you need to say goes through my attorney. Then I walked away. No apology. No negotiation. No more protecting them from consequences they had created. In the weeks that followed, I separated every remaining financial connection I had to my parents. I replaced compromised documents, froze my credit, changed account information, and stopped funding emergencies that somehow always became my responsibility. For years, I had believed keeping my family meant keeping them happy. That trial ended that belief. My parents tried to erase our relationship when acknowledging it became dangerous for them. Instead, the records proved exactly who they were to me and what they had done with the trust that came with it. I didn't leave that courthouse with the family I had spent years trying to preserve. I left with something more important. My name back. My future back. And the right to decide who would ever have access to either again. My parents told the judge I wasn't theirs to save themselves, But by the time that gavel came down, they were the ones answering for what they'd done.